Hi, welcome back to We Are Wool People. On this channel I talk about knitting. My name is Ailsa and I'm coming to you today from Dara Wool Country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and pay my respects to Aboriginal people and leaders past, present and emerging. I have got a couple of finished objects for you today, talking a little bit about some whips and my plans for my next cast on. So thank you so much for joining me today. Let's talk about knitting. First things first, I have finished my Jacques Collar, as you can see. There you go. As you can see, finished, open sides. I'm a bit fluffy on the back side and all done. I'm quite happy with it. I knitted it in Bendigo Woolen Mill alpaca, which I've noticed is discontinued, which is a real shame because I thought that I've had experience with alpaca before where it has been quite scratchy and it's actually made my fingers itchy while I was knitting it in other brands of alpaca, and so for that reason I sort of kept this yarn in stash for a really long time and didn't knit with it because I thought that it would do the same, but it didn't. And in fact, as I was knitting it, it got softer and softer. It was almost like a suri. Beautiful yarn, in fact, and quite sorry I've left it this long to knit with it, but anyway, done now. It definitely looks in the viewfinder here like a black yarn, but if you see on my Instagram page where I've just posted a picture of me wearing it, you can actually see it. I've got it with black trousers and you can see the difference. It's actually a really beautiful dark blue, a navy colour, and this knit is done in half brioche, and I have to be honest with you, it nearly broke me every single time. And the way that Paula Strict designs her patterns, Suzanne Muller designs her patterns, is that they quite often where the reverse side of the brioche is actually the front side with the finished garment. And considering the brioche only has two sides and the pattern repeat is only 2 rows, I don't know why every time I picked it up I started with the wrong side, and you can tell immediately as you do a few more rows that your fisherman's rib is actually on the other side, and I had to rip it back every time I started it. I seemed to knit it on the wrong side and have to rip it back. In fact, the last episode that I did where I held it up to the camera, when I was editing the video, I looked and went, oh look, you've made a mistake there, you've actually picked it up and knit it on the wrong side and shown it to everyone. But that's alright, hardly anyone watched the video so it doesn't matter. So I did make a modification in the collar. I didn't do the great big rolled over collar that is in the pattern because I felt that that would just be too hot for the Australian winter. Having said that, what I didn't do is more in terms of this front side and back side and correct side and wrong side, is that where you pick up and knit, even though the pattern does tell you this, where you pick up and knit, you need to make sure that if you are going to do what I did and modify the collar, that you make sure that the public side is the side that you have knitted here, so that, because if you turn it over, obviously you're going to get the public side on this side if you do it the way the pattern wants you to do it, because it turns it over. And that's what I've done, in fact, and I'm not going to take it back and rip it out, but the neck is actually the wrong side and the front is the right side, but I'm not going to rip it out, and I don't think anyone who isn't a knitter would really notice, and hopefully anyone who is a knitter wouldn't care that much. So that is the Jacques Collar finished, and it's funny because I've styled it with, I've belted it actually because it's got open sides. It's kind of a little bit odd, certainly a bit unexpected. My husband said to me, oh, you've knitted a tabard, And I was like, oh, what's a tabard? But yes, up here too, I have knitted a tabard. So I've belted it, and I'm wearing it with a pair of cropped sort of narrow trousers and some patent black loafers with a gold buckle on the front. And I've noticed that the look I'm kind of pulling off is 1700s Puritan man. I'm not sure that's a look that people are going to be going for this winter, but I quite like it. It's a little bit Charlie Chaplin, and I quite like that too. So I wore this actually last weekend when I went to the Fibre Frolic in Penrith, which is a yarn event that's run by a couple of knitters from the Blue Mountains, I think. And that was a great event. A lot of the same vendors were there on Sunday in Penrith that were at the Australian Yarn Show, and I was able to talk to them again and meet them again, and it was really another great event. The weather was not amazing. It was raining, not pouring all day, but raining, which was a massive contrast to the same event last year where it was boiling hot and jam-packed. It was a lot quieter this year, but I think that actually made it nicer. You were able to really look at the vendors and the stalls, and I think that anyone who did go to the Fibre Frolic last weekend were, probably serious yarn buyers, and I hope that the vendors did well. I do have a half-finished object in that I finished one of two. I knitted a sock. I haven't knitted a sock for a really long time, and quite a few years in fact. And I was on Ravelry, and this sock came up not in the patterns in the top 10 popular patterns area. This sock came up in the ads, and it's quite unusual for me to click on an ad on Ravelry, but I did. So, and it is called the 3D sock. And when I did click on the pattern and have a look at the other patterns from this designer, they are all great colour work, bright, fun socks. And I knitted this one on a 2.25mm needle, and it has been blocked, but because it's a colour work sock and I've never knitted a colour work sock before, I knew that I was going to have some issues with the colour work gauge, and everybody talks about their colour work gauge being tighter than their ordinary knitting gauge, and therefore you have to go up a needle size. And I did that, but then I realised that in fact my colour work gauge isn't much different to my ordinary knitting gauge. I'm going to bring it up close and show you what I mean. So from the first, let me hold it still, that's better. From here to here is where I knitted it on the same needle that I had used for the ribbing, and in fact I feel like that's actually quite even. But then when I thought, oh no, it'll be too tight, let me change to the bigger needle, I've knitted on the bigger needle from there down, and that's where I think the gauge does in fact grow a little bit there. But it's a sock, so I'm not really going to be too precious about the perfection of the gauge when it's only going to end up on your foot under your trousers. The other thing about it is that it ended up being absolutely huge because, again, I was worried about the tightness of the colour work, and it's a 66 stitch sock, which is way too many. I mean, even 60 can be quite big on me, but I put this on my daughter's boyfriend's foot. Well, I didn't put it on his foot, he put it on his foot. And because he wears bright socks, I've noticed. Anyway, I showed it to him last night, he really liked it, and he put it on his foot, and it fitted him very well, although he had a bit of trouble getting it over his ankle. But once he did get it over his ankle, he liked it. So I might do another, I will do another one, and I'll match it to this one, and then he can have those. this is not a heel flap and gusset sock, and I've only ever done socks with a heel flap and gusset. This is a short row heel, and I've never done that before. And let me show you the good side. There's one good side, which I like, and then there's one dodgy side, which I don't like. So and there's a hole there, which again I don't like, but that's a technique issue. This is the first time I've ever done this kind of sock heel, and I will pay more attention when I do the second one and improve that. And then you do some it's a boomerang heel it's called, and it's a round toe using I assume it's using the designer's own technique of the round toe decreases. And so I finished a sock, the 3D sock. And here is the second 3D sock that I have cast on using her little tip for what she says is a way of curing yourself of second sock syndrome, which I definitely suffer from. She said when you cast on the next sock, cast on for a different sock, and then it will actually help you. She says it works. So in fact, I've cast on the second sock in the opposite colour scheme using only 60 stitches and using the other coloured yarn as the dominant yarn in the colour work, and not changing any of the needle size to fiddle with the gauge, because my colour work gauge is actually pretty much spot on my ordinary knitting gauge. So there you go. So this is what this one is looking like, and I think I like this colour combination a little bit more. It's very fun knit. Now, can you see the cast on of that sock? It's a long tail cast on called a double Latvian cast on. Very interesting, and I found it on YouTube, I think, or yeah, I did find it on YouTube. It's very much like a long tail cast on, but you hold the yarn double and you flip the thumb each stitch. So one you go this way through to get a knit stitch, and the other one you go that way through to get a purl stitch. It looks great. It's almost like a picot edge on the sock, and it's very decorative and very, very stretchy, which is what you want on the top of a sock, right? So I'm really happy with that. So I'm learning things in this sock knitting 2024 iteration of my sock knitting. I've learnt two things so far. One of them is the boomerang heel, which I've never done before, and the other one is the double Latvian long tail cast on. And I really love knitting for many, many reasons, but one of the reasons I love is that you're always learning, and I think that is fantastic at any age. I often meet knitters, sadly, who have been knitting for decades and decades, and they've never tried anything new. And I feel like even though they've been knitting for decades, that doesn't make them experienced knitters, does it? I don't think so. And I look sometimes on YouTube and see a lot of the younger knitters that are coming through into the industry now, and they are so amazing with how open they are to new techniques and how excited they are about things that they've been doing, that they've tried for the first time. And I love that. I just think that that's fantastic, and I love that about the community. You know, gatekeeping in the knitting community is so rife, and I just don't agree with it. Anyway, that's my hot take for today. I feel like let's welcome everyone in who's giving it a go. I think that's the way to go. I'm going to definitely cut that out. So what else have I got to share with you today? I think it's going to be quite a quick one today. Can we just take a moment, if you don't mind, to celebrate and enjoy the result that I got when I dyed that fluff that I bought from Obsession Yarns for my Oxford jumper. As I said, and I ended up with choosing red as the colour I was going to dye it, and this is the colour. It is beautiful. Look at it. I love it so much. It's gorgeous, and I'm so pleased with how it came out. I am not always, you know, over the moon with my dyeing results, but in this case, I've really nailed it, I think. So I have in fact got quite a fair bit done on my Oxford jumper, and I've got it on a hanger here, and let me show you. I've got, oh wait, I'm on the try out the tubing. I'm actually finished the body and the neckline of this knit, and I'm working on the sleeves. And I actually might just pop it on for you and show you what it looks like. So here you go, here you have it. So I've finished the neckline. It does look a little bit wide, and I think what I'll do is I think I'll put a little bit of elastic around the neckline to bring it in a little bit more. To be honest, it probably could have been a couple of rows longer, but because it's knitted from the top down, I now can't go back and add any more rows. I was very impatient with my little turnover collar, and I probably should have done it a centimetre or two deeper, but it is what it is now, so I'm going to leave it. I think I'll put a bit of elastic in, as I said, and bring it in slightly. You can see that it has enormous leg of mutton sleeves that are very, very dramatic, and that's what I'll be knitting on this week to get those done. And the body is finished. It is probably a little bit big, but it's a lovely colour, and I noticed when I put it on and gave it a bit of a steam that it did grow in length. And what I might do is I might bring it back to about here and have the ribbing higher and longer, but I'll let you know how that goes. These gorgeous dramatic sleeves, I can't wait to get them finished. I will tell you something though, I was looking at the pattern, and the very next step I have to do when I get these back on the needles is it says now you have to add a few stitches for volume. I really feel like they don't need that much more volume, right? Anyway, this is the Oxford jumper. I am really not used to knitting anything in this kind of gauge. I historically and over the last couple of years, most of the things that I knit are on 4-ply yarn, fingering weight yarn. I very rarely use a knitting needle above a 2.75 because I'm a loose knitter, and this is knit on a 3.25 needle, which is huge to me, and I am not sure that I really like this gauge. What do you think? Tell me what you think, because I feel like this knit is it's very out there for me. It's not something that I'm quite a conservative dresser, and I feel like this knit probably would appeal to a younger person rather than me, but I do love the colour. And in fact, I put it on my daughter. She tried it on yesterday. She's 23, and she's got dark hair, and it looked beautiful on her. And I said to her, well, when I finished it, you can have it if you like. And she went, oh, red's not really on my radar. And I was like, oh, it should be. It looks great on you. Well, hopefully, when I do finish it, I might be able to get her to put it on and show it to you, so you can see it on someone with entirely different colouring to me, and also totally different generation to me as well. But I am really enjoying the process. Beautiful. It's been lovely so far. I've got a bit to say about the pattern that we'll talk about at the very end, but it is definitely looking like it does in the picture on the pattern. So in that regard, it's a win, isn't it? So I'm going to take it off and put my Jacques Collar back on, and then we'll talk about another finished object and some whips and get moving. So the 3D sock pattern is by a company called Knitter's Heaven, and the designer is Kat Kraus. It's a fantastic knitting pattern, worth every cent. It is so detailed, and so much thought has gone into explaining the differences in gauge between a plain knitted sock and the colour work. There are two options for the colour work. One of them is for a fine colour work pattern, and the other one, why am I going in and out of focus? One of them is for a fine colour work pattern, and the other one is for a more of a bolder colour work pattern. And there are multiple options given in the description for various iterations of sock, toe colours and heel colours, and tips and suggestions on yarn value and hue and colour choices, and it's a fantastic pattern. I thoroughly recommend the 3D Socks by Kat Kraus, and the resulting sock I think is a lot of fun as well. This yarn is a Malabrigo sock yarn, and I don't know, rookie errors. I thought these two yarns were the same. I bought them, I don't even know where. I thought these two yarns were the same yarn, and then when I took the band off them, I realised that they are the same brand, but they're not the same yarn. And this orange one is actually not all wool. It's got some bamboo in it, I think, and this pink one is just plain merino and nylon or polyamide. And this one's actually got a little bit less meterage in the skein than this one, so this one's slightly thicker. And I was a little bit worried about how that was going to affect the tension and the gauge in the sock, but it's okay. But yeah, I like these two colours. They were quite bright. I was going to knit one of Stone Knits' charming colourwork socks, and I was going to knit the one with the flamingos on it. And it's a fun pattern because it's 2 in 1. One is the flamingo sock and the other one is a prawn, which I think is really cute. Anyway, but I ended up impulse buying this 3D pattern, and I have been enjoying it. So that's that. They are the only whips that I have. Oh no, I do have that blue jumper, but we won't talk about that. We'll talk about that another time. So my main whip is my red cardigan, the red Oxford jumper that I really am going to work very hard to get finished this week. These socks are just kind of palette cleanser projects that I work on when I might be in the car or giving myself a little bit of break from this red cardigan. But I do have massively itchy fingers dying to cast on a new project that is entirely yarn driven. When I was at the Fibre Frolic last weekend, I was talking to Jane from Mindful Making, and she's a lovely woman, and she sells the Hostgarn range of yarns, and I bought some yarn from her because I really wanted to support her business, and also because I couldn't resist this particular colour. I bought some Hostgarn Coast in putty. This is a beautiful grey. It's almost a green shade of grey. It really spoke to me, and I absolutely love it. And this is my next knit. It's a Q jumper, maybe. I'm not sure if actually any of my fantasy autumn knits are going to fit with this yarn, but this is what I'll be knitting next. And I bought to go with it this beautiful alpaca. Again, it's the Hostgarn Titicaca, and I bought it in a neutral cream coloured. It's a lace weight yarn. I'm going to hold them together. So this is a fingering weight and a lace weight. Jane said to me that those two held together would give me a sport weight gauge. I think that I will cast on the Marlena Kolacek's cardigan that has got the lace panels on it. I think that's what I'm going to knit with these, even though I did buy yarn for that pattern specifically when I was in New Zealand, but I think that I might move that yarn on to another knitworthy friend. But I am definitely going to be casting on these yarns this week and swatching for something that I really can't wait for. So watch that space there. What else have I got? I think for this week, thank you very much for joining me again and hanging out here at We Are Wool People. I really appreciate anyone who's watched this and given the videos a like or subscribed to the channel. It does help the channel out a lot if you subscribe or hit like or ring the little bell where you'll be notified of any new videos that come up. And I am going to try and make a big effort to post more regularly and get over my nerves about sitting in front of the camera and talking. Once I get going, I definitely warm up, but it is quite difficult and daunting to actually sit down and start. I need to get over that, right? Okay, so thank you very much. My name's Ailsa. This is We Are Wool People. Join me again next week when I think we're going to deep dive into the high street chains and in Australia and what they're offering for knitwear for winter 2024. So if that sounds fun, keep an eye out for the next episode of We Are Wool People. Thank you very much. Bye.